it's a weird week when I get to spend time with a really cool dude in Region 5, Jim Catanzaro. Make the man cry. If you haven't seen our interviews, my bad. Sorry, Cat. I didn't mean to do it. But the great answer about why you're at Lake Forest.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. But then you have to outdo me on Sunday. I mean, let's take a look at what I mean. To quote a song by CeeLo Green, bleep you, okay, for that one, dude. I mean...
Yeah, exactly. That was what a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It was so much fun.
So how did that come to be in the first place? Tell us the story.
The short version of the story is that this guy, Brian, who manages CeeLo, lives in the area, had been to the club that my band plays at pretty regularly, and it just, by happenstance, a few months ago, we've been covering one of CeeLo's songs for a while. Deanna, the GM, said, hey, listen to this. She showed him the video. They were like, holy cow, that sounds great. Will these guys be the backing band for CeeLo if we get an event here? Long story short, we got the event organized, and we got to play a couple of songs with a Grammy Award-winning artist. It was pretty amazing, man. I had the biggest smile on my face. It was only about 10 minutes after waiting for hours and hours for this thing to really get going. But they had the 95 South guys, if you remember those songs from college. I think you might be old enough, Frank. Like the Tootsie Roll and Come On Ride the Train and all that kind of stuff. They opened up, and then we came on with CeeLo, and it was a blast. We had such a fun time.
That's awesome. I couldn't be happier for you. I'm just joking. Although, I mean, hey, I wish I could have been down there to celebrate it with you. I don't know if folks realize, but at your wedding, you and your wife sang at your own wedding reception. And so, I mean, music is in your blood for sure, both of you. And so awesome to see that, give you a little bit of a fun Sunday night after all the work you put in for the show throughout the weekend. So appreciate that. And we got a lot of football action now. Look, we're not all fun and games and music around here. Well, we are games, I guess, if it's football. But anyway, this is season 17, crunch time for week 2 of In the Huddle. So we've got a lot of things to talk about. I enjoyed my time in Region 5, and a couple of the games that we're going to cover in Crunch Time involve those two games. So we'll see a lot about that. I'm not going to bore you with too much regarding that. But we've got discussion about something that we had talked about on Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it, with respect to Randolph-Macon hosting Hobart, and that really exciting close game. It was a surprising game. More on that in crunch time, and then we'll go further about it later on. But JB, just a very unexpectedly great week of football, or weekend of football that we had here, because there were games that went into overtime that we didn't see. A Region 1 game that many people wouldn't even bother watching normally was one of the best games of the season already. The back and forth nature of it. I mean, you give your 30,000-foot view of week 2 of D3 in 2024.
Yeah, I think, Frank, for me, the two things that stood out for week 2 are some shootouts and some statement wins by some programs that really kind of put themselves on the national radar with some impressive victories. There were a couple of close calls in each region, but most of the action was really going on in 5 and 6. Big reason for your trip. We'll get into that a little later on. But there were some great games across Region 1, 2, 3, and 4, and so we'll cover them all here the best we can, and let's get it rolling.
You want me to just go into it right now? You just want me to dive right on in and say this is crunch time for week 2 of the 2024 Division III college football season? Because it is. Let's start in Region 1 in the game I was alluding to earlier, Coast Guard at Anna Maria. And we'll go to second quarter, 11:16 left. David Robinson gets this 18-yard touchdown pass from Ryan Russell to make it a 17-14 lead in favor of Anna Maria. But Coast Guard comes roaring back. The Bears do. Second quarter, 10:25 left. Brooke Desta, a 36-yard touchdown pass from Joey Armentrout, makes it 21-17. But hold on. 5 minutes later, Coast Guard again, same pair. Brooke Desta, 41-yard pass from Joey Armentrout, 28-17 Coast Guard. Hey, third quarter, 16 seconds into the quarter, James Wheeler IV, a 76-yard touchdown run, 35-17, 18-point lead Coast Guard Bears. This game's over. Or is it? A minute later, Anna Maria's Kevin Acosta Jr. gets a 26-yard touchdown pass from Ryan Russell, making it 35-24. 5 minutes later, it's Jamal Cariglia with a 22-yard touchdown run, 35-31. Coast Guard still leading, but Anna Maria is not done. 2:20 left, third quarter. Justin Oliver, a 54-yard touchdown pass from Ryan Russell. They have taken the lead back at this point and overcome an 18-point deficit, 38-35, in favor of Anna Maria. Fourth quarter, 2 minutes into it. Kevin Acosta Jr., 61-yard touchdown pass from Ryan Russell. They have now extended the lead of 45-35, but wait a minute. Coast Guard, 5 minutes later, Van Bumen, a 3-yard touchdown run, takes it to a 3-point game. With 3 seconds left, Brennan Holt has a chance to send this wild game into overtime, and the 20-yard field goal is good. 45 apiece, we're going to overtime. Coast Guard's Joey Armentrout starts the scoring in overtime with the 2-yard touchdown run, the extra point good, 52-45. And then defense finally shows up in this game as Ryan Russell is intercepted by Ethan Lasher, and that would do it. Coast Guard, who basically ceded an 18-point lead and then was down by 10, wins the game in overtime, 52-45. Armentrout, 484 total yards, 3 passing, 2 rushing touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Ryan Russell, 26 for 37, 432 yards, 4 passing touchdowns, and an interception. Also in Region 1, no highlights to show you here. Wesleyan with a 43-7 win, which was a surprise the way this thing played out against Middlebury. Chase Wilson, 5 catches, 168 yards, 1 receiving touchdown. The Wesleyan defense held Middlebury to 80 rushing yards, 3 sacks they had, and an interception. JB, you gotta love those gems of games that you just don't see coming as classic games like that Coast Guard Anna Maria overtime game. Tell us more about Region 1.
Well, yeah, and speaking of some of the shootouts and statement wins, I mean, you got to give the Cardinals a lot of credit. I mean, Wesleyan, I don't think was really on anybody's radar to be that dominant coming out in Week 1 against Middlebury, who's won the conference in recent years and has some NFL potential prospects on that offensive line, and they only rush for 80 yards. Well, looks like the Panthers have some work to do. Either that, or maybe the Cardinals could be the early favorites along with Trinity for the NESCAC championship. Hardin-Simmons took care of Curry pretty handily, 73-21. RPI gets its first win of the season, 32-25. A little closer game than we may have predicted. WestCon and WPI win. St. Lawrence takes the Hoffman Cup in Vermont against Norwich, 20-9. Merchant Marine wins big, 55-7. Widener also by a couple touchdowns, 27-13 over Eastern. Mass Dartmouth, though, I think putting up the same amount of points as the Cowboys, 73-7 over Fitchburg State. FDU Forum, Brian Thomas, their quarterback, still playing really well. I think he was named the MAC Player of the Week for that, throwing more touchdowns than a 35-7 win over Albright. Worcester State taking down Plymouth State. That's a bit of a surprise, Frank, 27-21, one of the closer games. Kings, Amherst, and Catholic also win pretty handily. So does Keystone, 51-26 over Hartwick. Castleton taking down Framingham State. Really looks like the Rams have kind of fallen off in the MASCAC, Frank. It's kind of a strange thing to see there, but Lead Val wins by 30. You had Springfield drop 76 points on Husson. That was a game we thought was going to be close. Maybe not so much. Del Val wins comfortably 42-7. WNE beats Salve 45-27. That was another game that kind of surprised me a little, Frank. And then Trinity takes care of business against Colby in a lower scoring game, 17-7. Williams 42-7 over Hamilton. Westfield State beats Bridgewater. That's a big win for the Owls. Good for them. That's 24-17. And then Tufts edges Bolden 23-21. And then finally Rochester takes down nearby Alfred State 28-0.
JB, why are we surprised by Springfield? They are one of the top 8 teams in the nation. Have you not heard this from Logan Hansen? I mean, come on, man.
Yeah, right, because, come on, man.
Springfield, we love you, but we also know better, and you also know better about how this whole thing plays out or should be playing out, but we'll get into that later on. Let's go to Region 2, where Johns Hopkins visited Christopher Newport. And we'll start, this is a weird game. Second quarter, 54 seconds into it, PJ Scales gets a 28-yard touchdown pass for Bay Harvey to take a 7-0 lead, does Hopkins. Second quarter, 10:08 left in it. Christopher Newport's Max Lawton gets a 40-yard field goal to make it a 7-3 game. That's our halftime score. Third quarter, 1:08 left. PJ Scales again, a 20-yard touchdown pass from Bay Harvey makes it 14-3. Late in the game, this is an amazing thing. The fourth quarter, 11 and a half minutes of the fourth quarter were consumed by one drive, a 16-play drive by Johns Hopkins. 11:35 off the clock. Bay Harvey, though, is incomplete to Scales on 4th and 7 at the CNU 18. But they really took away any chance for Christopher Newport to win the game. And you'll see here the last play, this 3rd and 23 play, that does it. Johns Hopkins wins the game, 14-3. Bay Harvey, 12 for 22, 120 yards, and 2 passing touchdowns. Gunnar White from CNU, 83 total yards. Cole Peters, our former guest of the show, 12 tackles for Hopkins. Then we've got Endicott at Ithaca, another good game here. Second quarter, 51 seconds into it, it's Jalen Leonard Osborne getting an 11-yard touchdown run to give Ithaca a 7-0 lead. Then 7 minutes later, Javier Cosme Diaz gets a 3-yard touchdown run to even up the game at 7 apiece. That would be our halftime score. 3 minutes into the second half, it's Kennedy Charles. That's the correct order of his name. 57-yard touchdown pass from Clayton Marangi. Marangi, just a stud in this type of play here. 13-7, it's Endicott leading. We're going to take a look, though, here. Colin Shum is intercepted in the fourth quarter, and that would almost end, basically, it sounds like possibly his season right after that, as he was injured in the fourth quarter of this game. And it's sad to see this right now because he was starting off with a head of steam to look like this season. Later in the fourth, though, Javier Cosme Diaz, he fumbles and it gives it back to Ithaca. Ithaca had chances here. 4th and 6 from the Endicott 8-yard line, and Michael Reed, they went for it here. Instead of going for the field goal with 4:06 left, he loses 2 yards. And so a chance maybe later on to kick a field goal or tie doesn't play out. And they do have a chance at 4th and 20 at the Endicott 26. Matthew Parker, the backup quarterback, intercepted by, I believe it's Alfino Davis, and that does it. With 44 seconds left, Endicott wins this defensive battle 13-7. Clayton Marangi, 14 for 26, 199 yards, 1 passing touchdown. Jalen Leonard Osborne for Ithaca, 13 rushes, 49 yards, 1 rushing touchdown. One thing I want to ask you, you watched this game. Take some folks through that fourth quarter because that was just a wacky fourth quarter before we continue in Region 2 here.
Yeah, I think it was a combination of some turnovers and then maybe some coaching calls that if Mike Topero had him back, he wouldn't have made. I mean, I really did feel like they should have taken the points and make it a 13-10 game there in the fourth with 4 minutes left. It seemed like, they maybe because they have so much luck and they win so much at Buttersfield, it was like, you know what, we're just going to go for it and just try to win it here. But it feels like they just underestimated the Gulls a little bit. And then with the quarterback injury, the turnovers and what have you that were going on, it's just one of these games that kind of slipped away from the Bombers late. But you have to give Endicott credit; they played a heck of a game.
Sorry about that. Bombers are at 0-2, I want to bring up here, but still very, very much alive. We'll talk more about that later. We'll continue now in Region 2.
For sure.
Brockport at Susquehanna. And with 2 minutes left in the first quarter, Kyle Howes gets a 40-yard touchdown pass from Tommy Wright in this case here. A little interesting play here with a 10-0 lead for Susquehanna. But Brockport responds. 24 seconds into the second quarter, Daniel Mena gets an 81-yard punt return for touchdown. 10-7 is the score. Brockport trailing at that point in time. We will go to the 6:37 mark in the second quarter. Kyle Howes, a 9-yard touchdown run for Susquehanna. That eventually makes it a 20-7 game in favor of the Riverhawks. We'll go to the third quarter, 10:50 left. In Brockport's Isaiah Simmons, a 2-yard touchdown run. He shaves the lead down to 6 points. It's 20-14. Susquehanna still leading. And they would get an extension of that lead with 6:55 left in the third quarter. Rayshawn Lamons, a 20-yard touchdown pass from Josh Ehrlich. 27-14, Susquehanna leading midway through that third quarter. We'll go a full quarter later, fourth quarter, 5:50 left. Isaiah Simmons, 5-yard touchdown pass from Ben Gosella. It's 27-21, Susquehanna leading. Brockport would get the ball back on their own 14-yard line with 1:36 left. Here's a 4th and 10 play from their own 14-yard line. Gosella is complete to Nolan Slikwa, and that's to the 30-yard line, ultimately to the 32, 18-yard gain there, first down. They'll get another first down here as he completes to Daniel Mena, so they're making ground up here, getting to midfield essentially is Brockport, but 3 plays later, it's a fumble, and Susquehanna recovers the ball. I believe it's Ben Fleming with that recovery, and he staves off a disaster for Susquehanna. They win 27-21. Josh Ehrlich, 291 total yards, 1 passing touchdown. Ben Gosella, 18 for 30, 205 yards, 1 passing touchdown and an interception. More on that in a second. Let's go to the upset special in Region 2. Muhlenberg at Salisbury. We're going to fast forward here. It was 21-21 midway through the second quarter. 5:53 left in that second quarter. Ronald Clark, 86-yard touchdown run for Salisbury. 28-21, they lead at that point in time. The Seagulls trying to fly high here on this long play. Then, 10 seconds left in the second quarter, just before halftime, Dario Belizaire gets an 11-yard touchdown pass from Gage Katzenell Hall, I believe is the way you say it. 35-24, that's the lead for Salisbury at halftime. But Muhlenberg comes roaring back in the third quarter, 54 seconds into it. Aaron Daniels, a 61-yard touchdown pass from Joe Rapetti, makes it 35-31. They're down by 4 points as Muhlenberg. 9 minutes left third quarter, Timothy Buddha, a 3-yard touchdown pass from Rapetti. They take the lead, 38-35. But Salisbury scores quickly again. 3 minutes later, actually, Daniel Clark, 30-yard touchdown pass from Gage Katzenell Hall. It's now a 42-38 game, and then 3:31 left in that third quarter. Ronald Clark, a 25-yard touchdown run, makes it 49-38. There was no looking back here for Salisbury. They win this game 59-38. The teams combined for 1,180 yards. Ronald Clark, 11 rushes, 180 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. Joe Rapetti for Muhlenberg, 436 total yards, 3 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown, but 2 interceptions. It was something that several people called in quick hits, including myself. Wow. And we were beginning to see this turn for Salisbury here, JB. And it looks like with, I think, 2 straight weeks of 600-plus yards of offense, they are back now back in a big way.
Big time. Yeah, for sure.
Take it away.
And they weren't the only team they weren't the only team putting up a lot of points. The champs, once again, with 70 burger out of the gate. Are they going to just lay it to Susquehanna this Saturday? We'll see. But yeah, what is it, 146 points they've scored in 2 games, Frank? That's a lot. The Red Dragons are coming out hot. Carnegie Mellon, Buffalo State also won pretty big, or pretty by wide margins. Moravian, surprisingly, had to come back. Well, maybe not surprising to them, but I was surprised to see that they came back to down 13-0 to Utica to win 18-13. And maybe my Hobart Statesmen who are hosting them this Saturday better pay attention to that one. That was kind of an interesting surprise there. Westminster, Pennsylvania wins 23-10. Alfred has some school records broken. One of their wide receivers had almost 300 yards receiving in the 64-28 win over Juniata. St. Vincent wins 41-20 over Allegheny, I should say. Ursinus wins 31-17. Dickinson 24-7 over William Patterson. Rowan 2-0, another NJAC team here, off to a hot start, 30-20 over McDaniel. And look at Coach Palaz and the Red Hawks of Montclair State. They actually had a field goal block that was returned 77 yards in the touchdown in this one. They win by 1 point against Gettysburg, close one, but you got to give Montclair credit. They're 1-0 to start the season. TC&J nips Franklin and Marshall 17-13. Union hangs on for 18-15 win for Coach Drack's first win as the Union head coach. And there goes my sign. Case Western 64, Bethany 6, and then Washington Jefferson 58 over 57, 58-7 over Teal. And yeah, you better tape, I guess.
I can't believe how much tape is on that thing and it still fell. My God.
I'm just going to stick it on the printer from now on. I think that's where it's going to stay for the rest of the year. I'll move the Hobart football so you can see the season 17. There we go.
That's amazing. Well, listen, JB, let's go to Region 3. We have a game that we didn't think was going to be a really close game, and were we surprised here? Hobart at Randolph-Macon. Second quarter, 4 minutes into it, Ahmad Kroll gets a 19-yard touchdown pass from Johnny Columby to give Hobart a 7-0 lead. But 4 minutes later, it's responded to by Randolph-Macon's Jason Moore. A 31-yard touchdown pass from Dante Casiola ties the game 7 apiece. We'll go to the 2:30 mark in the third quarter. It's a 4th and 1 from the Hobart 1, and it looks like Randolph-Macon should have been able to go in to score on a goal-to-go situation. They are stopped and even lose a yard on this play, so Hobart takes over and downs. That's a big play because later on, we're in the fourth quarter here, deep into the game. 2nd and 7 from the Hobart 39, and Johnny Columby completes an 18-yard pass for a big first down, keeps the drive alive, and then a penalty for pass interference against Randolph-Macon sends the ball down to the 26-yard line. Eventually, they'll get it to 3rd and 1 from the 17, and there's no time left. They've got to kick the ball. Tobias Wiffering misses the 34-yard field goal attempt. It sends us to overtime, tied at 7. Randolph-Macon gets the ball first here in overtime. 4th and 2 from the 17. Dante Casiola is complete for the touchdown to Landon Ferris. They get the extra point. It's 14-7 in favor of Randolph-Macon. Hobart, they have a 4th and 1 from the 16-yard line, and they clearly get it. Johnny Columby gets the first. Wait a minute. The ball came loose. And the questions all over the place because, as you'll see here, the linesmen come in and mark the ball at the 14-yard line. Eventually, they're going to say it was a fumble in possession to Randolph-Macon. More on it later. The final score, 14-7. Randolph-Macon wins the game. And again, the missed field goal as time expired gave the opportunity to Randolph-Macon to win that game. Dante Casiola, 16 for 21, 143 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and an interception. DePaul at Berry is the other game we'll talk about in Region 3. First quarter, 9:18 left. Robbie Ballantyne, a 6-yard touchdown pass from Nathan McCahill, gives DePaul a 7-0 lead. Halftime would be 10-0 in favor of DePaul. We'll go third quarter, 8:59 left. Jalen Smith, 53-yard touchdown pass from Nathan McCahill, makes that score a nice 24-0 lead for DePaul. Then 5 minutes left in the game, 2nd and 10 from the 1-yard line by Berry, and Sam Oberhausen can't get out of the end zone. It's a safety credited to Luke Nolan, And that makes the score, ultimately, the final score I should just go to here, 33-0. DePaul wins the game. Nathan McCahill, 11 for 20, 150 yards, 2 passing touchdowns and an interception. Brandon Cade for Barry, 26 rushes, 74 yards. JB, honestly, DePaul blanking Barry is one of the bigger surprises of the weekend. We didn't see that coming. At least I picked DePaul, you picked Barry, but I would never said that would be the score.
No, and now it kind of takes a little wind out of the sails of what we were thinking might be a big Week 3 game, and Randolph-Macon hosting Barry, who's now fallen out of the top 25, and I don't know how they come back from that one. We'll have to see what these guys are made of. So a big surprise, probably the biggest surprise for me in Week 2 was the score in that game. Not surprised necessarily that DePaul won. I mean, I picked Barry. I thought that they would win at home, but I didn't see them losing by 33 points and getting shut out for only the 5th time in school history. So tough break for them. But elsewhere in Region 3, we had some close games. We had some blowouts, as we were talking about before. Averett beats Greensboro 27-20. Hampden-Sydney wins 51-30 over Brevard. Southern Virginia gets thumped by 80 points. Bridgewater Eagles, wow, probably one of the highest scores you'll see from all weekend. W&L, though, scored 68 over Apprentice, 68-28 in the win in that game. Sewanee wins a 42-0 shutout. Anderson of South Carolina, I believe, another NAIA team, takes on LaGrange and wins by 30. Ferrum nips NC Wesleyan 28-24. That's a bit of a surprise. ETBU wins big 63-28. Maryville, Tennessee comes up a little short in a very close one against Center. A good USA South SAA game there. Guilford Methodist, another close call, 14-12. Goes to Guilford. Howard Payne loses to Payne, which is interesting. One of the box scores there, 29-27. Rhodes beats Austin 49-13. Trinity University of San Antonio takes care of Belhaven by a 55-10 score. Looks like the Tigers got their claws back there. Texas Lutheran wins 31-10. They're 2-0. McMurray wins 48-6. And UMHB, ironically, Frank, this game was not on the D3Football.com scoreboard. It kind of fell off. I don't know. I guess people forgot about the Crusaders there. I know they're playing Westgate Christian, which is not necessarily a name brand school. They won pretty easily 85-6, but still.
It's a situation, and being in a Slack group, I've heard about this. They don't view it as a true football organized school in the same realm as a normal NAIA or D3 or whatever else program out there. So that's why they don't count it in their record, which will pose interesting issues throughout the season, because we'll have one win-loss record and they'll have another probably as we go through this stuff. So don't shoot the messenger on this one, folks. Let's go to a game that I attended in Region 5 as we go into Regions 4 through 6. And we'll start here with Illinois College at Lake Forest. A minute and a half into the game, Josiah Kidd gets a 21-yard punt return for touchdown. The punt basically hit off the up man's back, and he collected it and ran it in for the 6-0 lead for Lake Forest. A minute later, Illinois College's Colin Brunstein gets a 20-yard touchdown pass from Destin Chance. Get used to this pairing. 7-6, Illinois College leads. But get used to this name as A.J. Jackson, with 8:02 left first quarter, gets a 1-yard touchdown run. 13-7, Lake Forest lead. 9:18 left second quarter, Trey Birdsong, 26-yard touchdown pass from Chance. 14-13, Illinois College takes the lead back and then expands on it with 6:06 left in the second quarter as it's Colin Brunstein again. A 74-yard touchdown pass from Destin Chance. 21-13, Illinois College. But before halftime, A.J. Jackson gets his 7-yard touchdown run with 2:04 left in that second quarter. 21-20 would be our halftime score as IC leads that game. Third quarter, minute 30 left. A.J. Jackson gets his third rushing touchdown of the game, a 10-yarder here. 27-21, Lake Forest takes the lead. But fourth quarter, 13:20 left. Colin Brunstein, a 64-yard touchdown pass from Destin Chance. They take the lead back, 28-27, Illinois College. Fourth quarter, 2 minutes, 15 seconds left. A.J. Jackson, a 1-yard touchdown run, makes it 35-28. Then you'll see here, that it's a dropped ball by Destin Chance, and one play later it costs them badly as A.J. Jackson takes it in from 17 yards out for his 5th rushing touchdown of the game, 42-28. Destin Chance would get his team to score one more time, but the onside kick fails barely, and the final score would be 42-35. I can't even count this high anymore, in favor of Lake Forest. A.J. Jackson, 121 total yards, 5 rushing touchdowns in the game. Destin Chance, 471 total yards, 5 passing touchdowns, and an interception in a losing effort. My goodness. Let's go to Alma at Denison. This was a weird game for sure. Just before halftime, Alma's Zach Poff gets a 9-yard touchdown pass from Carter St. John to give the Scots a 22-9 lead. And just as halftime came up, Devin Frenchko gets a 57-yard touchdown pass from St. John. They're leading by 19 points at this point at halftime, 28-9. We'll go third quarter, 9:38 left. They'll expand it to 26 points as David Reef gets a 3-yard touchdown run for Alma, 35-9. But Denison roars back. A minute 4 into the fourth quarter, Tommy Asselson gets a 16-yard touchdown pass from Tyler Green to make it 35-16 in favor of Alma still. But then 4 minutes later, Billy Guzzo gets a 43-yard touchdown pass from Green, 35-23. It would be 38-23 after a field goal by Alma. But 1:04 left, fourth quarter, Tommy Asselson gets a 17-yard touchdown pass from Green, 38-30. It's an 8-point game. And they try the onside kick. They fail at it, but they still had timeouts, JB. And as a result, they still had to get a first down. Alma did. 3rd and 5 from the Denison 49. And Carter St. John is complete to Jordan Williams to basically end the game. Alma wins 38-30. Carter St. John, 302 total yards, 3 passing, 1 rushing touchdown, and an interception. Trey Fabricini from Denison, 22 rushes for 109 yards. We'll go to the other game I attended on Saturday, and that is North Central at Aurora. It was a lot of North Central early on. First, 4:53 left first quarter, 22-yard touchdown run by Joe Sacco. Makes it a 10-0 game in favor of the Cardinals. Then, a minute 4 left in that first quarter, Joe Sacco again. This time from 28 yards out, 17-0. It is North Central's lead. Second quarter, 4:51 left. It's Joe Sacco again. The hat trick in the first half. 3-yard touchdown run. 24-0 in favor of North Central. Second quarter still. 26 seconds later, Trey Madsen. We've told the story about him. He transfers from Aurora, gets the touchdown for North Central in his first game as a transfer. And Luke Lanin with that touchdown pass to him, 31-0 at that point. Aurora would score in the first half. Minute 34 left here. Zachary Russell with a 1-yard touchdown run. 31-7 at halftime in favor of North Central. And North Central would score 4 minutes into the third quarter as Jacob Parody gets a 35-yard touchdown pass from Luke Lanin, 41-7. Final score. I mean, Aurora would come within 20 points of them, but eventually 48-21 the final score. Joe Sacco, 19 rushes, 146 yards, 3 rushing touchdowns. Tyler Atkins from Aurora as quarterback, 28 for 40, 344 total yards, 1 passing touchdown, and an interception. Let's go to Wartburg at St. John's. First quarter, 6 minutes into the game. It's Bryson White with a 9-yard touchdown run for Wartburg. They'll lead the game here 7-0. Don't get used to that, though, as 2 minutes later, St. John's Quinn Christofferson gets a 3-yard touchdown pass from Aaron Severson. 7 apiece at that point. St. John's would take the lead in the second quarter. 11:25 left. Riley Schwellenbach, a 14-yard touchdown pass from Severson makes it 14-7 St. John's. The Johnnies expand the lead in the third quarter. 7:23 left. It's Marcelio Mendez, a 4-yard touchdown pass from Severson, 21-7 at that point. And then third quarter, 53 seconds left. Will Blakey, 8 yards on a touchdown run, 28-7 Johnnies at that point. Final score is pretty much all St. John's in this game, 35-13. Severson, 34 for 38. My goodness, 324 yards, 3 passing touchdowns. Trey George for Wartburg, 8 receptions, 115 yards. We'll go to two games coming up here. Both went to overtimes in this Region 4 through 6 summary we're doing here, starting with Linfield at UWO. After the first quarter, Linfield was leading 10-7. Second quarter, 2:44 left. Oshkosh's John Mayhew, he gets a 17-yard touchdown pass from Cole Warren. So Oshkosh now leading 14-10 in this game. Linfield took it to 14-13 at halftime with a field goal. Fourth quarter, 10:19 left. Linfield's Luke McNabb gets a 1-yard touchdown run, and the 2-point conversion was good for Linfield to make it 21-14. Linfield leading. Fourth quarter, 3:30 left. It's Clayton Schwalbe getting a 12-yard touchdown pass from Cole Warren to tie the game 21 apiece, and that's where we would end regulation. We'll go to overtime. UWO gets the ball first, 3rd and 2 from the 2, and it is a Justice Lovelace rush for the touchdown. 2 yards for that touchdown, and the extra point was good to make it 28-21 in favor of UWO. On defense, UWO forces an interception. Blake Eaton is intercepted by Kyle Dietzen, and that would do it. In overtime, Oshkosh wins 28-21 and moves to 2-0 against very good teams. Justin Lovelace, 22 rushes, 130 yards, 1 rushing touchdown. Blake Eaton, 14 for 23, 191 yards, and that interception, in overtime. Finally, Co at UW Eau Claire. Second quarter, 4:12 left in that quarter. Jaron centers for Co. A 6-yard passing touchdown from Clay Crosey makes it 21-0. Co. It would be 21-7 at halftime. We'll go to 4 minutes into the third quarter, though, as Eau Claire's Nolan Stans gets a 16-yard touchdown pass from Harry Robidoux that makes it 21-14 Co. Co would extend the lead, though, back to 14 points as Jaron Centers gets a 15-yard touchdown pass from Crosey to make it 28-14 halfway through the third quarter. 4 minutes later, Nolan Stans, again, a 1-yard touchdown pass from Rubidoux, makes it 28-21, and then they'll tie the game, will Eau Claire, a minute into the fourth quarter, or minute 40 actually. Yacht Chewell makes it an 11-yard touchdown grab from Harry Rubidoux to make it 28 apiece. We'll go to overtime. The teams traded TDs in the first overtime, so we'll go to a second overtime in this game. Co went first in that second overtime, and they get a touchdown eventually in this play, ultimately, on the rush. All kinds of weird things going on with the fumble and whatnot, but it is a touchdown, and a successful 2-point conversion makes it a 43-35 lead for Co. Eau Claire has a chance here as Rubidoux gets the touchdown pass to Nolan Stans, a 13-yarder here to make it 43-41. Here's the 2-point conversion to tie, but the pass fails, and that would do it. Co wins in double overtime, 43-41. Rubidoux, 29 for 42, 369 yards, 6 passing touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Trenton Barnes, the running back for Co, 26 rushes, 161 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. JB, I got to go get some drinks of water or something after all that, but that was exciting action. Take it from there.
Yeah, and so we'll start off in the upper left. All the ranked teams won against upper division schools. You had Whitewater, La Crosse, and Whitworth winning handily. Mount St. Joe's bounces back after a week 1 loss with a 28-7 win over Hiram. Fortunately, the Hiram is not going to get to play this Saturday due to a cancellation at Wittenberg. We'll talk about that in a little bit later. The Muskies of Muskingum win 24-7. Albion wins 56-21 over Bluffton. Kalamazoo 28-7 over Kenyon. A close call here, but Olivet wins 27-23. Hope wins big once again, 48-6. We had Anderson taking care of Oberlin, 20-6. We had Calvin coming up a little short in their second game against Concordia, Wisconsin, 34-24. Baldwin Wallace quietly 2-0. We'll see if these Jackets are for real. They win 42-7. Now, last week I made the mistake of calling Denison the Battling Bishops. That's actually the mascot for the Ohio Wesleyan team. They played Wabash. They lost 30-13, and Denison is the Big Red. They had an interesting game with Alma that Frank already covered on, so I caught myself there, Frank. Nebraska Wesleyan wins 34-24. St. Olaf 53-7 over Luther. Wisconsin Lutheran wins 44-13 over Buena Vista. That's for you people out there. Cornell of Iowa, 31-21 win over Lawrence. Ripon wins a close call, 23-19 over Grinnell. Rockford wins 31-24 in overtime over St. Scholastica. Another WEAC team winning a game, 24-3, no big deal. Monmouth takes care of Chicago, 34-21. UW Stout beats Dickinson State, 22-20. Manchester loses a close call, 27-28 to Concordia Chicago. And then some of these Midwest, West Coast games, Southwestern flies out to Puget Sound in Oregon and wins 47-19. The Dutch of Central beat Cal Lutheran and Thousand Oaks 35-10 with Greg Thomas taking some video along the way. Concordia Moorhead wins 31-3 over Pacific Lutheran. Adrian beats Madonna. I don't know where they're from, but they struck a pose in that 38-20 loss. Butler wins, they're a FCS Division I school over Hanover 53-0. Trine beats Rose-Hulman 39-33. Simpson 45-7 over Crown. Greenville 27-7 over Eureka. Knox 17-13 over Beloit. Bethel wins big 49 over Northwestern Minnesota 3. Minnesota Morris loses 20-25 to Hamlin. Benedictine 27-22 over Loras. Martin Luther wins by a field goal over McAllister 10-7. Lewis and Clark drops a 24-34 decision to Pacific. And then UW Platteville beats Dubuque late on Saturday. And then George Fox wins the late night red-eye game 37-14 over Willamette.
We only have 12 minutes left in the show. So I got to say, that was crunch time for week number 2 of the 2024 Division III college football season. JB, we got to hurry up here. I mean, we try to keep this show to an hour, and we are going to run out of time very soon here. So,
all right.
Yeah, JB's Week 2 MVPs, and I am in complete agreement with number 1, A.J. Jackson, getting to see him in person finally after all these years. And, I mean, we were joking about it in our interviews. You probably saw that. He did it himself. He actually says, I've been here for a while. Well, he has, but he's fought through injury and COVID and everything else. And to his credit, he's still there and very loyal to that Lake Forest program and 5 rushing touchdowns on Saturday. I would assume that's why you made him, or at least in part, your offensive MVP.
Well, yeah, 194 total yards. I mean, I know we had 121 from scrimmage, but, punt returns, kickoff returns, rushing, receiving, the guy can do it all. He's a literal, Swiss Army knife of offensive production. So amazing game and a big win for the Foresters. On the defensive side, this guy, Daniel Eliasek from Randolph-Macon, had, I think, a game-high 17 tackles. He supposedly was the one who punched the ball out to force that fumble in overtime. There was some controversy over how that all went down. We'll talk about that in a bit, but you have to give some respect to this guy for playing a heck of a defensive game in that close call for the Yellow Jackets. And then on the special teams, I went with Brody Rucker. He was good for 12 points in Wabash's win over Ohio Wesleyan. He was 3 for 3 on field goals and 3 for 3 on extra points. Can't get it much better than that. So, there may have been some other stuff out there, but for some reason I was like, you know what? Going with Brody, great job.
Let's go back to Eliasek and the question from Randolph-Macon here, or the question from Hobart on what happened. And again, let's go back to the play. It is a 4th and 1 from the 16-yard line. The line to make is the exact 15 because that was the first down attempt essentially by Hobart in overtime. So they started at the 25. They need to get to the 15. Johnny Columbi seems to have the first down and will stop and show that the 2 wing officials are coming in to mark the ball, but the right-hand wing official throws a beanbag while the other one is waving their arms, and I don't know if they're blowing a whistle or not. We can't hear it in the audio from this. If a whistle's being blown, that's a key problem here because we can't tell, even though we have a photo we're going to show you that the ball did come loose. Indeed it did. But the question becomes, if the whistle occurred before clear immediate possession was going to be taken, then it was an inadvertent whistle, and technically it would have had been handled as such, and it would not have given the possession to Randolph-Macon. So we don't know. What ends up happening on the field, though, is all kinds of chaos. Randolph-Macon takes the ball, goes downfield, as you know. Nobody knows what's going on. The referees go back to the succeeding spot and seem to be acting like there was no fumble. Not at one point did I see them put an arm out to say Randolph-Macon ball on a fumble. And that's where all the confusion comes from, because everybody assumed, oh, they're marking Hobart with the ball. But how are they marking Hobart with the ball at the 16-yard line instead of the 14-yard line ultimately? And so here's what we've deduced. And thanks to the ODAC for giving us some information and some other information coming from people that were at the field that day. More or less, it comes down to we think the right call was made. Okay, now whether or not an inadvertent whistle occurred, I can't tell you. But other officials who have viewed this film are as incredulous as I am that the mechanics absolutely sucked in the situation by the officials. Because, well, but it's true, because we need to understand as much as anybody, as fans, what happened in that end-of-game situation. I understand the microphone's not working, but there are arm signals out there for this exact situation. Yeah, like that microphone right there. Well, ours works, apparently, usually. But there was just nothing. And for us to have to track down over a number of hours an answer as to what happened on that play is honestly ridiculous in a game like that. Randolph-Macon, congratulations on winning. You should have won by more by all accounts, by what we thought should have happened going into that. Hobart, congratulations on keeping that game close. And boy, you had your chance in regulation. You did to win the game. Didn't happen. That's football. I get it. But long story short, the ball did pop out. It looks like the recovery was by Randolph-Macon. It looks like they didn't actually land on the ball. It was actually, whoever was running down the field was doing the right thing, because I don't believe the play had ended at that point. But all kinds of confusion happened there. And long story short, we think the correct decision was arrived at, but with a little bit of consternation on the way to get there on that. Any thoughts on that game or that situation?
I was just, as an alum, I was just proud of how tough the team played. Like we both thought that Randolph-Macon on paper was going to, win this game by 2-3 touchdowns. They have the 28, I think they've won 28 straight regular season games, which is one of the fourth best in all divisions of football. They're a very strong program. The fact that Hobart hung in there, I give those guys a lot of credit. Maybe with some of the Ithaca struggles and what we're seeing, perhaps this means the league is more wide open. The Statesmen have had a tough time with Ithaca of late, but this performance shows that they can go head-to-head with a top team and really compete. But it also maybe means that maybe Randolph-Macon's a little overrated. We had them as low as 19 or 20 in our preseason ranking. So, if you're a top 10 team, you probably put away an unranked team like that by at least 3 or 4 scores.
Also, look, I said it on my way out. I'm going to say it now. I think Aurora was overranked, basically, heading into their game. They have some, definite youth on that team. And that North Central Aurora game, to me, reminded me of when Florida State and Miami used to face off on Labor Day instead of later on in the season, where it's a great game on paper, but you have a lot of inexperience in starting positions that if we played this game in week 9 or 10, I have a feeling it'd be a whole different game the way it plays out. And right now I feel like Aurora's still got to find themselves in certain positions, and to lose Trey Matson and with several others honestly on that team, they will find themselves. Don Beebe is a master head coach. He's proven that time in and time out here. But I just feel like both teams were not, what I would call of the caliber that we expected in that game. Even North Central, and you'll see from the interviews, if you haven't seen them already, that I had done with North Central players and the coach, Brad Spencer, they are not satisfied with how they played in that game. But the problem with North Central, JB, is that how many more challenges do they have on their schedule? Realistically, Wheaton, Augustana's down a little bit this year, I think.
The CCIW, I think, has been overrated for a few years anyway. So I think, Wheaton will certainly, get up for that game, and with Giovanni Weeks, and this new quarterback that they have. I mean, they'll give them a good run for their money, but I just don't really see anyone challenging them until maybe the third week of the playoffs.
I've thought maybe second or third week. Even the game now coming off the first round. I mean, if they're a 1 seed, they're protected pretty well. If they're not a 1 seed, then it might be a somewhat interesting game. But like you said, probably the quarterfinals is where they'll get their first real challenge ultimately. This has been an interesting week. Just looking at some of the scores, looking at some of the teams' finishes. Peter Jennings, kudos to you for your UWO scheduling. That team is going to be in a very good position by the end of the season because of that. You may have seen the Logan Hansen, what I call out of context rankings, because what apparently he's doing is merging his probability index with what he believes the MPI index is. And that's not MPI. Okay, MPI is a snapshot in time of, okay, what are these teams' strengths of schedules? What are these teams' win-loss records? What are these teams' quality win bonuses and all the other stuff that goes into this? And so, when we see the whole thing about Springfield being a, top 8 team in the listings, that's where the joke comes from, because where is Oshkosh? Where are a few teams out there? Ithaca at 0-2. And I will keep saying this. At 7-3, if they need a Pool C bid, they're going to beat a lot of 8-2 teams automatically based on their strength of schedule. 6-4, Ithaca. They're going to have what I believe to be the best strength of schedule in the country this year, again. And as a result, 6-4 under this new formula may, not definitively, but may be able to get a team like Ithaca in if we have a bunch of 8-2 teams, and some of which are middling 8-2 teams out there. That's very interesting. I got a coach reached out to me today and said, Ithaca is the real deal. And no doubt about that. None of us are disputing that. Okay, they have scheduled themselves very tough. The Endicott game, as you said, I think if they had to go back and do over a couple of things, they would have in that game. The only concern now is the Colin Shum situation. He seems to be out. I would have to assume based on that injury we saw. And if that's the case,
didn't look good.
We don't know. No, I mean, what's the next man up like? And we saw a little bit of that, and they weren't able to win the fourth quarter with him. We'll see if that gets better from there. But you can't trust the numbers yet, JB, because we're too early in this thing, and I'm not using somebody's probability index to determine who's going to the playoffs in week 2. I'm sorry, we don't know who teams are in many cases still. We can only say UWO has really done themselves well with who they've played so far. Ithaca has done themselves well with who they've played, but they need to win these games that eventually here and go 7-3 if they can, with a win versus Cortland later on in the season. That would, I think, guarantee their entry, and we'll see what happens. But last thing I want you to maybe talk about, what is with Susquehanna struggling with Brockport 2 straight years? And now this go-around with Cortland, Cortland's not sleeping on them this go-around.
No, and I just think it's one of those things where Brockport matches up really physically well against Susquehanna, perhaps, or just from sort of the ground and pound approach. Their size, their speed, the kind of offense that they run is tough to stop. It's 3-4 yards and a cloud of dust kind of stuff. And so I just think that it's a bit of a physical beating that the Riverhawks struggle with. And you look at Josh Ehrlich's numbers, not great. They always have great defensive secondaries, so tough for guys to get open. A lot of pass rush talent. So I think it's one of those things. And the way Cortland looks right now, they've come out and they've scored 146 points. I mean, I think they're gonna come and try to really stick it to these guys as a revenge game from last year, and it'll be interesting to see if Susquehanna can take those punches and fire back, or if this game is going to be over by halftime.
Couple important things. We'll pick that game, obviously, and talk a lot more about it on Friday because I will be attending that game on Saturday for sure at noontime in Selinsgrove. Mike Gatelius, Coach Gutt from Catholic, was in the press box during Saturday's game, and I was talking to him actually Saturday evening when I was on the sideline in the Aurora North Central game. He said he felt a little tired, but he was really happy to be back and wants to be back in the field. But just for him to be there is awesome. And Coach, we're still praying for you to get through all the things you need to get through with what you've been going through. So prayers to him and for him still. But also, Tyler Pullman has returned to school at Springfield, is my understanding, and may actually join his team on the field on Friday night's game against Union in Springfield. Maybe not playing full-time as starter type situation because obviously he's a little out of sync right now, having missed a couple weeks. But just the fact that after everything he has been through with his family, he's back on the field most likely and back in school at the very least with his brotherhood around him, and that's important as well. So thrilled to be able to report both those things as we had some bumpy starts in our preseason with all that bad news that we had to keep bringing to you. Maybe there's some, light at the end of the tunnel on some of this stuff for sure. Having said that, your final thoughts on week 2 as we begin to transition into week 3 for sure here.
Well, I'm glad that you skipped over the fact that you beat me by 3 picks in our prediction contest. I guess we can review that on Friday's show. You're now up 2. So like you said last week, got you right where I want you. So there we go. Yeah, you had a good week 2, Frank. You went 12-2. I went 9-5. So a little shaky there. There were some surprise games though. I didn't see Salisbury winning by 21. I didn't see DePaul winning by 33. So I'll have to just do a little more homework and get ready for week 3, which has another great slate of games coming up. So we'll be excited to share those with you on Friday morning, 9 o'clock. Be there.
Absolutely. And if you thought I saw that 21 or 33 point distance, oh yeah, I know. What are you doing? No. You can't throw that away. No, if you thought I saw those scores coming up or anything like that, no, I didn't. But a win is a win in the way we pick these things. We don't go against the spread and all that crap. But JB, as you said, Friday morning, probably 9 a.m. as usual, we will come live with a guest to join us, or maybe guests. We'll see what happens here. So stay tuned to see what we do. But thanks for joining us on Crunch Time here, or our Crunch Time show, I should say, in the Huddle. And thanks as always to my co-host for all the work he puts in, and to you for watching, folks. Have a great rest of the week. We'll see you on Friday morning.